Hello, everybody, and welcome to Writing the Rapids, the show where I, Joe Bielecki, talk to writers about writing. Very often, those writers have been recommended to me by writers who have previously been on the show. In the case of this month's guest, Tex Gresham, he was recommended to me by Dan Eastman. If you liked that episode, you'll like this one, and if you like this one, go back and listen to that one. Tex Gresham is the author of Sunflower, Easy Rider 2, Sleazy Drivers with Kurt, This is Strange June, and Heck, Texas. He is an award-winning screenwriter, and his debut feature, Mustard, is available for free on his website, squeakypig.com. He lives in Los Angeles, and his most recent book, Violent Candy, is out now from House of Lad Press. And just a quick note before we get started proper, there was some sort of weird distortion that was happening during the recording. We tried to change microphones and we wiggled cables and we couldn't really quite nail it down. And I did what I could to suppress it as much as I could in post, but sometimes these things just can't be avoided, especially when you're recording over the internet. I don't think it's too distracting, but I thought I'd mention it just so you know that I'm aware of it and that I did what I could to make it better. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so at patreon.com/noisemakerjoe. For just $2 a month, you get these shows a little bit before everybody else does. You can also toss me a one-time donation over at paypal.me/noisemakerjoe, or you can buy my book. It's called Tired, and it's pretty darn good. And if you don't have any money to spend, talk about the show on social media, rate the show where you listen to it, tell a friend about it, that sort of thing. Now, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Tex. Let's start out with Violent Candy, the new book that is coming out today. The copyright page on the book says October of this year, I think. So is it out as of the 26th?
It's out. There was a
okay.
Yeah, as of now it's out. It's actually been out for a month. There was an accidental publication of it in September. On September like 25th. Brian was going over it and was ordering something and accidentally hit the publish button, and then we were like, oh well. And we just did it. We went with it, and so yeah, it's out.
Cool. I dig it. There were some stories in it that were really quite bizarre, and then others that were a little bit more grounded, but there was this sort of feeling of dark comedy to it, and a lot of sort of like domesticity type of things. And looking at the acknowledgments in the back of the book, some of these stories are as old as 2018, such as the nature of, I think, writing a short story collection. We'll talk a little bit about how Violent Candy came together.
It was, I kind of, there's the Lillo thing of like, find your obsession or whatever. I forget who said it exactly. I want to say it's DeLillo, and I'll just say everything's DeLillo. But, it was a find your obsession thing, because if you look at DeLillo's books, he's writing about the same thing every book. He's just doing it in different ways. And I just kind of, like, over the years, writing stuff, doing short stories, doing this, that, and the other thing. And I kind of, like, realized that there was a through line between all these stories that were in this collection. There's three that aren't, that were cut. And they still have the through line, but I think they were just cut for time, for strength, and for space. But yeah, I just kind of I kind of realized that there was this like singular thing that I was talking about and was like trying to wrestle with myself, and it's like and all these stories that I collected in here, I was like, I didn't fully realize that I was having this conversation the whole time. And when I put it together, when I realized, what sort of my obsession is, then they all just kind of fell together. There's a bunch of stuff that like wouldn't fit in here, and I have no place for them. They're just out there either online or they're not in any, because there's some in here that weren't published, that are just brand new to this, that I've been holding on to for a while, and there's a bunch that are I've been holding on to for a while that wouldn't fit in here. But yeah, I found the obsession and I recognized it, and I kind of like put it all together, and yeah, that would be, I guess that's how it came together.
Sure. So, okay. So you mentioned this obsession. Define it for me. Because like, I think I get it. But like, I like to define our terms. So like, can you even name like what exactly it was that you were obsessed with as you were doing this?
Yeah, it's sort of like, it's the idea that like, that you could think your life is going great and it could change on a dime in the worst way or the best way or whatever way. And even if you think it's the best way, it's actually the worst way. But it's sort of the changing of life in an instant. Mm-hmm. And sort of the fact that the trajectory you were on is now completely different and you have to figure out a new way. It's, taking yourself out of comfort, and it's the sort of like the violence that occurs to your life, to your path, right? And that could be, it could happen often, or it could happen never, or it could happen once. And these are all these stories are moments where it's like the most sort of aggressively changing thing for all these people, and it's sort of the isolation, the solitude of having to go through those changes, and having to experience those changes. That's I guess that's what the obsession is.
Yeah. I remember I've been sort of thinking about that sort of like wild human fragility for a little bit. And whenever I try to write about it in a sort of nonfiction way, I always come back to Spring Breakers, where spoilers for Spring Breakers, I guess, at the end they go to raid Gucci Mane's house and like immediately James Franco's character just gets shot and dies. And like a complete tonal kind of like surprise from what you might expect. I mean, it's kind of telegraphed that his character is like incompetent beyond beyond where he even is, but just like movie logic dictates that like this shouldn't have been the way it is.
Right.
And colors the rest of the scene. The first story, Iris, that sort of like violent life change happens like several times in rapid succession too, where her life is irrevocably changed, but for definitely the worst, but also maybe saved in the same way. And then relationship things that are sort of implied there too. It's a very strong start to this collection, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I love movies where that happens, right? Spring Breakers. I love To Live and Die in L.A. The William Friedkin movie. Spoiler alert. I always feel like spoiler alert only exists for movies that came out like within the last like 2 or 3 years. If it came out in the 80s, you haven't seen it yet, sorry, you're going to get it spoiled. But To Live and Die in LA, the main character that you're focusing on just gets blasted in the face with a shotgun in the most crucial moment of the movie in the most weak way, and that's it. And then you have to finish the movie with someone else, and it's not even like facing the main bad guy either. It's like this sort of side, sort of kind of important scene, just dead. And then you finish the movie with someone else, and everything happens, right? And it's like, that's like one of my favorite bits. You know, of course, Uncut Gems, the ending of that is, you know, it all leads up to that. And that's like the punchline of the movie, but it's like happens so late that you're not expecting it to happen, you know, even though it's going there, right? So I really like those. I love movies where, you know, either at the halfway mark something just dramatically changes and shifts the entire color of the movie, or, you know, at a point unknown to you, something happens to where the movie just absolutely shifts and you got to catch up. You know, Barbarian is like the most recent example of that, you know. But I like that.
Yeah.
I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Don't Breathe does that too. It's like, let's go rob this old guy's house. Oh no. Oh no. What is he up to?
What does he have in the basement there? Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I forgot about that. That's a good one.
Yeah, there's something to stories that, like, you know, have a flattening effect, I think. But the world is just way more complex than you can say in a story. And so you have, when you have a story that sort of acknowledges that, it feels so strange. I feel like In the Rough does that in a sort of more familiar way, where you just have a guy who's working a job, and it turns out, or it doesn't turn out, it's implied, it's suggested, he thinks that maybe this job is something completely different. You know, it's like telling the story from the perspective of, like, someone who works at a laundromat. That's, you know, like one of the stories that one of the stores that Walter White buys as a front.
Yeah. Well, that one's as close to, like, you know, what, if you want to, whatever autofiction you want to call autofiction these days. That's about as close as I'll get, I think. I don't think I'll get closer than that, but that's as close to sort of like translating almost moment for moment real life for me in writing. The only time I'll ever do that is if I were to, like, write a nonfiction book about, you know, something. You know, I have a nonfiction book about movies and film festivals that I've been working on for a long time that I doubt I'll ever finish, but we'll see what happens. But, you know, that's like, you know, that's obviously like more diary, you know, kind of thing. But In the Rough, yeah, that's as close to the autofiction as I'll get.
Oh, that's fascinating. So, that makes
worked at a golf course. Worked at a golf course. They found a dead guy. He'd been bitten by snakes. There was a weird, you know, it's all, you know, of course I was, you know, at that time I was constantly stoned at work. And so, you know, my mind at the time was like, you know, connecting dots that maybe weren't there, but, you know, this is sort of those dots seen through me, older and different, and no longer that guy. So
yeah. Ooh. Well, I'm glad that Lovebird isn't the autofiction one. So
maybe it's not.
Not yet.
No, it's not. Yeah, not yet. We'll see when I get there. We'll see when I get to the retirement home. I might be at that stage by then. Who knows?
You know, I'm thinking about it now, just bringing up In the Rough and Lovebird, and then thinking about Trauma Novelle. There's kind of a running theme of that, like, or maybe not even theme, but just idea of the sort of nefarious world behind our world. Eyes Wide Shut is a movie that a character becomes obsessed with, and in Lovebird, when all the orderlies go home at the old folks' home, it turns into some sort of weird Tijuana sort of something or other. And yeah, I mean that's I don't know if you would call that a trope or what, that I find particularly interesting as well.
Yeah, I think it's I trope. Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's sort of like, I don't know. I think it's like a paint. It's like a paint you use to sort of lay down a base on a story, or like a concept, like you lacquer a canvas first. It's like you're gonna put that, hey, everything underneath here is not cool, and then let me paint some bits underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, and that I don't know. For me, that's just a byproduct of, I see almost nothing as like not weird or bad, in that, like, I see a commercial, I go, what are they really pushing here? I see Twitter, I go, what's Twitter really about, right? That's just like, I don't know, that's kind of, and I feel like that's common, and I feel like to a degree that's, that's like just a natural sort of normal state we're in. I think there's a, when you get too far into it, you get into the tinfoil hat stuff, but I just have a general distrust of like legitimately everything and everyone, and it like takes me a while to get into not distrusting something or believing something or believing someone, and yeah, so I think that's like, when I see stories going in that direction, I go, like something I'm reading or a movie I'm watching, I'm like, yes, okay, great, yeah.
Okay.
That's kind of, it's the Blue Velvet, kind of thing,
yeah.
Peel back the layers kind of
right
narrative, where you as the viewer or the reader are responsible for peeling back the layers and like defining something outside of just what you're reading,
Right. Yeah, I think I'm trying to grapple with whether or not I want to say I wish the world was more like that or what. Because I guess I probably don't. There's a saying I've heard that the world is run by C students, and so like I don't believe that there's an Eyes Wide Shut sort of situation going on with all the richest people. Like, I imagine that they have parties and that, like, untoward things go on at those parties, but like I don't believe that there's secret passwords and Venetian masks and and stuff like that, right? Like, I think, the Freemasons have had that for a while, certainly, and probably like other orders, Golden Dawn and the Rosicrucians probably had like weird, fun religious sex
for
parties,
sure.
But like, it feels impossible to imagine that, like, in Florida, at like the state government in the basement, that all those guys are doing like silly, weird sex things at each other.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way. I think that's just something that people, like, I believe that, like, there are things that are sinister happening, that people are manipulating people and things like that. But I do not think it's like that, what you're saying. Like, there's this mass, like, controlling force, or there's like, whatever, when I say controlling, I mean when someone puts out a product and the commercial they're showing, what they're really telling you is that you're not good enough. That's what I mean, like the subliminal versus like, the guided, there's someone, we're all chess pieces, and this one family is controlling all of it. I'm like, that's an easy response to society. That's an easy response to life and reality. And I think it's really hard for people to grasp that, society, life, culture, whatever, is really just a bunch of people running into each other and bouncing off and moving, and it's just chaos,
Yeah.
And I think people get afraid of chaos, and so they find order in order to feel comfort.
Yeah, it's somehow more comforting to imagine that someone is intentionally making the world this shitty, as opposed to the idea that like nobody is trying very hard at all one way or the other, and so it's just kind of shitty by default.
Yeah, shitty by default, I think, is exactly it. Yeah,
that'll be my Midwest emo band.
Shitty by default. That legitimately sounds like something.
Yep, coming to a like basement show near you.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
But it actually turns out to be the best band in the lineup.
Right.
Shitty by default is the best band in the lineup.
Everybody's trying really hard, and the musicianship is just there. Let's talk about Mustard a little bit. I didn't know what to expect. I remember seeing you posting about it on Twitter and being excited and just not occasioning to see it until now. And it's no secret that part of the reason this show exists is to force me to interact with the art of my peers in in a meaningful way. To carve out the time on purpose. And so I didn't really know what to expect, and then afterward I was like looking at your bio and learning more about your professional experience and stuff like that, which kind of informed some of the things I was seeing visually. But yeah, kind of in the same way that we talked about how Violent Candy came about, I'm interested in how Mustard came about too.
Mustard came about, so it was sort of a reverse engineering of the whole thing. Is that I made that Demon Team sort of middle bit.
Mm-hmm.
I made that whole thing. I had that in my head for I don't know. I started it in like 2008 or whatever, and I was like, I'm gonna make this and I'm gonna submit it to Adult Swim. And I made most of it, and I just never finished it, and I lost interest, and then I lost that hard drive, and it was gone. But it had always been that thing where I was like, oh, I want to go back and revisit that because that was actually a good idea. And then I made it. I asked people, hey, do a voice. And a lot of people like gave me voices and did stuff, and I put it together. And when I watched it, I was like, this is actually really stupid, like really, really dumb. And like, it is not at all like the kind of thing that I would, I don't know. I don't think I would go, hey, check this out. This is my best work, And then after, I just I was talking with my friends who my childhood friends, the guy at the end of the movie that I'm showing it to, and he's like, I'm like, what'd you think? And he's like, I don't like it, but I was showing, I showed them, and I was like, let's do this bit, right? And so everything, it was just going to be Demon Team and then everything after, and that was all I was going to do. And it wasn't going to make sense the after at all. It was just going to be completely like, what, and then I was like, well, I got to have something before this. So, and then I just started like, coming up with like, well, who is this person, right? Who is this like sad guy who thinks this Demon Team thing is like the best thing he could do and be really proud of it, and it's actually garbage. And then I realized that guy isn't that far from me. So, because it was me, you know. It's like, this is, you know, it's like, it isn't me, but it is me, you know, kind of thing. But it's like a really, I don't know, a more sad version, a more pathetic version of me. And so I just kind of like reverse engineered what leads up to this. What are the things that would make me laugh, that cause this guy problems and cause this guy to be, you know, sad, and what kind of life does this person have, and what kind of, like, you know, and it was, you know, it's informed by what I'm doing and what I was doing. You know, I work for people, write for people. I was doing messenger work across the city at the time, and it was great. I loved it, because I got to see a lot of stuff. But, you know, at the same time, it was like I was really bored and I didn't have time to do anything else. And so, but I made this whole thing while I was doing that.
Right.
And yeah, that's it. There was only like 3 scenes that were written in script form. The rest was just made up and went with and all that stuff.
Okay. I like that. There was something really, I don't know. There's something about it, right? There's something to it. I guess the fact, or the thing is that it feels indescribable, and maybe it being kind of reverse engineered like that is part of what does that. I remember reading something from like a faculty page when you were doing like visiting professorship somewhere, talking about how you like narratives that make people uncomfortable, or like non-traditional narratives. And I was like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I kind of felt like there were some hints in the film as well. Like there's a shot where you have a big Inherent Vice poster, or where you're just chugging away at a vape pen watching a John Waters movie. And so I, like, as I was watching it, I was like taking those hints in and being like, okay, so what is it that's going on, right? Like narrative, or not narratively, I guess, but like, what is it you're trying to make me feel?
Bored. That's kind of what I, you know, that's the opening quote.
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
Existence is an exercise in boredom, you know, and it's like, you know, I don't know. It was like for me, it was a triple layer thing. It was like the film, you know, it's okay to be bored with the movie because it's boring, right? And I kind of wanted it to be boring, but it's also the person's life in the film is boring.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you know, I feel like I get bored with a lot of stuff, you know? And so I was like, well, let's go full in on boring. You know, the boring was like my sort of driving identity for, you know, the time a little bit before, while I was making that, and a little after. I was like, I'm just really bored with everything. And so I was like, let's make the most boring thing I can. And then, you know, the Demon Team thing is like this promise of something exciting. You know, he's working on this thing. He's got this thing. It's going to be great. And it turns out, you know, some people like it and all that stuff, but like, to me, it's not good, right? It's not really that good, right? It's not as exciting as the whole thing leads up to, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's almost the equivalent of like going through the motions of life, and you're excited about this movie coming out, and then you go see the movie and it's like just terrible, or just real mid, or whatever, right? And it's just not good. And then it's like this sort of, well, that sucked. My life's over now, you know, kind of thing. That I think a lot of people, especially like huge, like real deep cinephiles, and like people who get like real obsessive with movies and stuff. Like, I love movies. I'm obsessed with them, but like, I don't at all have the thing where it's like, I'm anticipating the new Christopher Nolan movie coming out or the new whatever movie. I get excited about movies coming out, but I don't go, "Ooh, I'm so excited," and I like think about it every day, and I'm like, this movie, and then when I go see it in the movie theater and it doesn't meet my expectations, I'm like, suicidally depressed about it after, right?
Right.
And I think there's a whole subgenre of cinephiles who are like that, and that's who the guy in the movie is, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of feel like the Marvel Disney business strategy is to kind of cultivate that. Where it's like, I'm really excited about this movie because it's going to give me good clues for the next movie. Which is what was so exhausting for me. Because I was like, no, I just want to watch a good movie. Just give me one good movie and then take the money.
Give me a story I can close the cover on at the end and be like, great.
Yeah.
Don't leave me open for something else, or tell me you'll get the rest of this when this other movie comes out.
Right. I was really delighted that to see him like cry tears of relief and joy when he finished working on Demon Team, and then to get to see it and be like, oh, it's just bad C Lab 2021. And I was like, oh man, is his big project a YouTube poop? And then it was even less less than that.
Crying tears of joy at that, and I think that's like, that's almost how I felt finishing Mustard, is like, I was like, oh my God, I did this thing that I've been wanting to do my entire life, which was make a movie, and I made this thing, and it's like, you watch it and you're like, this is the result, it's sort of like the praise, believing yourself to be making not bad art, but in fact you're making very bad art, but you're making bad art. You're unaware that you're treating this thing you're unaware of being bad art as if it's like some next huge thing for you, some next step, some like big breakthrough in your life. And there's almost like this thing where after finishing Mustard, I was like, oh my God, I made a movie thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I made a movie. I don't like to call it a movie because it's not to me. It's just like a long video almost,
Sure.
But it's a movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I made this thing. But then in reality, what it is I go, oh, okay, I made that thing. Cool. And then you move on, right?
Yeah.
And it's not like the big thing that changes your life, or that makes you feel something that you anticipated it making you feel in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Do you find yourself more satisfied, I guess, like doing the making of something, like doing the writing, than you are with whatever the final product ends up being?
Yeah, I think so. I like making more than I like presenting, I think, because, in the presenting aspect, you kind of rely on other people to watch it and to respond to it. And then when people respond to it in a good way, you're like, cool. And then when they respond to it in a bad way, you're like, fuck you, you're wrong. And like, it to a degree, the only thing putting stuff out, and I'm grateful for everything I have put out, right? Like I can't believe I have even just like one thing out in the world, let alone many. But I think there's a degree where you have to, where you just, I've learned to a degree, I'm still victim of my own, ego and vanity and all that stuff. But I think you put stuff out, it's not yours anymore, it's everyone else's. And when people don't like it, whatever, right? People talk shit about critics, they say people who can't become critics, right? And, I think it's like, at what point have we gone oh, this critic is the absolute be all end all of every kind of knowledge that we have on these things, and what they say is true, absolutely. And it's like, you just kind of, I don't know, realize that that's the case. And so once something is out there and it's in the hands of people and critics and people who think they're critics and people who think that their, opinion on something is worth sharing to others and all that stuff, that's when it's like, it's no longer mine. I can't even really pay attention to it. Like I'm always, if someone goes, hey, loved your book, I'm like, sweet, cool, good deal. Love it. I appreciate that. Right. I don't ever really know what to say, other than thank you,
Sure.
And I think, working on something is like, that's just for me. And that's where the joy comes in. Whereas the other end of it, it becomes some kind of navigation, and self-promotion, of like, hey, watch my movie or read my book or whatever. And it's like, you're begging people to do something, and that's fine. But it's just kind of like, we're also inundated with stuff all the time that, like, I get it that no one wants to watch this thing or read this thing. So why am I going to harp on it if I can't even be, everyone was talking about Oppenheimer and Barbie, and it's like, I didn't go see those movies. I love movies, and I didn't go see those, right? I usually wait for things to come to me, to see them. I'll rent them. And so, yeah, it's like, doing is the thing that's exciting and fun. Putting it out there, having it out there is the thing that feels mysterious and almost pointless. And like, there's no map, there's no guide, there's nothing. You just kind of like, you put thing out into the world and then you flail. And there's people that, they put stuff out into the world and it's like everyone responds instantly. They're like, love this. And it's like thousands of tweets every day about something, but unless you're that person, and who knows how to be that person, what is it?
Yeah, for sure. It occurred to me, and this might be because my work is a bit more on the experimental end usually, but I enjoy when people read my stuff so I can figure out what it is.
I get that.
I like it when someone says, "Oh, this was like this," and I say, "Oh, great! I will have to watch that movie then. I'll have to read that book so I can tell if you're right or not." But yeah, like, you can always tell when I'm trying to submit stuff around because my tweets are very grumpy because I hate that part so much. That, like, it's just, there's so much about it that, like, in the infrastructure of how, especially in our writing ecosystem, the infrastructure of submitting stuff is getting better. You have some sites popping up that are making things easier, but God, back in 2016, 2017, when I was really trying hard to like submit flash fiction around, it was so frustrating. Every website had their own different way of how they wanted cover letters and different word count things, and then you wait for 8 months and then they send you a 1-line email back, even yes or no, and it's just like, oh, okay, I guess that's great then. Move on to the next thing. And then, yeah, especially when no one knows who you are, when you can hope to maybe have a couple retweets and hope that those people also read the thing. Certainly writing must be, I guess, for the character in Mustard, like, his thing is that he's trying to be a script writer, TM, right? Mm-hmm. He's trying to like be the guy, which I don't blame, right? Like, especially if you've gone to school for something and you want that to be your job. It took me 8 years from graduating with a broadcasting degree to get a full-time degree in broadcasting. So, like, I totally understand somebody who goes to school for script writing and then pops out of it and then moves to the most expensive place in the country to live, like really be striving to be able to justify all of that. But it does seem like that would make it hard to do everything in between.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I did those, that's why it's not, it's partially my life, because it's like I did that, but like I am working for, I was doing work, I was writing things, so it's like I'm not the screenwriter guy, but I've got, I'm doing work and stuff like that, so it's like it's not yeah, I'll say I'm here, I'm making I'm making a comfortable living, I'm able to live, I'm able to survive, I'm able to go do things I want to do, it's so the difference is is like, yeah, I couldn't imagine being someone who doesn't have those kinds of things, isn't that kind of thing, like I don't know that I probably wouldn't be here in the city. I'd probably be moving back with my parents if I didn't have some opportunity or something like that, some kind of thing. But because trying to navigate that unknown, the like, please love me aspect that is, submitting and putting work out there or trying to be a screenwriter or whatever, is like, I don't know. I don't know very many people who are quality at that, who can do that effectively. It takes a certain type of person to do it without A, seeming like super sad or desperate, B, seeming toxic, or C, seeming aggro, or whatever, right? And it's like, because I feel like in a lot of ways, who you are matters more at large when it comes to this kind of stuff than what you do and what sort of talent or product you have. And if you're, complaining all the time or doing whatever, people get annoyed at that shit and they move on. They don't listen to you, right. Or if you're aggro all the time and you're talking shit about people, no one's going to talk to you, or if you're like being desperate and begging for people to look at this and do this and do this and do this, then people are like, you're annoying the shit out of me, and they don't, care about what you do. But you could have written the greatest book of the 21st century, it could be the greatest document of humankind. But if you're not nice, and I mean that like in like a big sort of thematic way, if you're not nice, no one cares. And that's sort of like, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me, the hardest thing to sort of like grapple with,
Yeah. I think that's super important. Yeah, that's I couldn't have said it better myself. I am curious what the day-to-day, the nuts and bolts of moving out to LA and trying to get work as a writer actually looks like, right? Like I took one script writing class in college. And so like I understand how to make what I'm writing look like a script. But if I finished one, I'd have no idea what to do with it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of things require you to, there are fellowships to enter, right? And those are like the things that like, if you get distance in these like bigger fellowships, you get people to like, you get people who go, okay, this person has an ability to some degree, and then you can talk to people, or you just make friends with other people, or you say yes to everything, really. I said yes to one project that led to me being asked. I said yes to a project to these two guys that led to that I turned it around so fast for them that they then hired me to do that Callisto Protocol thing, which I turned around really fast. You know, we worked on it. It was like 2 months to write 6 episodes of something from start to finish, like introduction, completion, 2 months kind of thing, where we were like every week it was like, here, write these 3 episodes, and then it was like, it was a lot of work, and then which led to them giving me work for a bigger project, you know. And it's like, if I would have said no to the first project, which I would have said no maybe 5 years ago to, then I wouldn't be, you know, able to exist as I am now, right? So it's like, you kind of got to say yes to stuff you don't want to do, and then most of the time that works to your favor, and you work kind of into something you maybe want to do, or is closer to, or you get, you know, more pay or more responsibility, and it also doesn't hurt to have work out in the world that people can see, you know, if you have books or stories or whatever, and people have put their faith in you, then other people will notice that. You know, if you're just going out here and someone's like, what have you done? And you're like, well, I have a script written, which, by the way, having a script written, you're ahead of about 90% of people who live in LA and say they're screenwriters. A lot of people who live in LA and say they're screenwriters don't have a script. Wow. You know, they just think they are that person.
Yeah. Oh, that gives me such anxiety.
Yeah. So if you have a script written, you know, you have something, you have more than others, right? And you know, I'm teaching right now, so that's like, you know, my main source of income. But you know, I'm always navigating things. I'm always trying to. I'm working on something right now that you know, I'm working on, you know, 2 or 3 things right now. One of them is something that I'm hoping to get some money for to film, but we'll see. I don't know. It's, you know, it's a short, but it's the money aspect of it is, it does not feel like short money. It feels like real money, and I'm like, holy shit! If this happens, that would be unreal. But it's with, you know, it's with people and with a company that in 5 years ago I would have been like, hell no, that's weird. But now I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Because who knows what it's going to lead to. So let's go.
Right.
You know.
Interesting.
But I really don't know anything. You know, I'm like, I'm just out here flailing. You know, I'm like, yeah, chicken with its head cut off kind of thing.
Right. And yeah, such is the life of an artist, I suppose. Yeah, it's just weird to me. Like, I wouldn't know how to even begin. But I guess you just got to be there, and you got to just see what's there. I suppose if you're in LA, there's probably a lot more like opportunities that you could find just by like being outside in the world that you wouldn't know about being in Grand Rapids, Michigan, like me. Like,
yeah, like today, I'll give you an example. Today I was at a coffee shop, and I was sitting there writing. I was working on this thing, and I was writing, and the lady behind me was sitting there and working on her computer, drinking coffee, and she answers her phone, and she said, Julianne Moore's office. And it was Julianne Moore's lead assistant sitting in this coffee shop behind me, right? And, you know, she came up later and she was like, excuse me, I got to use the restroom. Can you watch my stuff? And I was like, sure, right? And if I was someone who did something like this, I would go, you're Julianne Moore's assistant. I actually have this script here that I think she'd really like. You think you could pass it on to her after I watched her stuff, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, you never know. You could be like, hey, you know, a lot of people are going to go, don't do that. That's an asshole move. Yeah. But I mean, like, how many people in the industry are assholes? You know, a lot, some people, you know, but how how do you get ahead in life? You kind of have to be an asshole at some point in some way, right? Or you just talk to this person and you interact with her, and who knows what happens. But it's like, there's a door that someone might have taken, or a path that someone might have taken right there. But it's like, I'm not that person. I would never be that person, because I respect this person's privacy too much, to go, hey, do this thing for me, or their time and their energy, or the boundaries that you have. But like, some people aren't like that. There are some people, like the person at viewing for Pearl, who's I forget what viewing it was, but it was for Pearl, and they, in the middle of the Q&A, asked Mia Goth if she would read their script, and she got up and took the script from them, and they got a script to her. And it's like, that's what it kind of requires out here to some degree, is like, you find an opportunity and you got to jump on it, and you got to kind of ignore the fact that you look like an asshole to everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, there's ways to be polite about that too, right? Because
sure,
it is like, you can say, to Julianne Moore's assistant, you can be like, look, I understand people are going to, people ask you stuff all the time when they figure out, who you are and who you're connected to. But I feel like I should probably also be that guy. Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. The self-deprecating sort of thing. And it wasn't Julianne Moore's assistant. I just made up Julianne Moore's name. It was another name, but I'm just doing the thing where it's like, the further I can remove fact from what's going on, the better I feel it is for the people involved. There's these people are hounded all the time, that it's like, if you can just like make it so that, and I know you sign up for that life when you sign up for that life,
mm-hmm.
but it's like, I think people are very unhealthy with their interactions with celebrities and their parasocial relationships with the celebrity, that like, I do not want to be responsible for, anyone going, oh, Julianne Moore's assistant goes to this coffee shop, I'm going to go to every coffee shop. And not that anyone would, but,
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. You don't need to contribute to the harm going on in the world if you can help it. I dig that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm curious. I feel like this is such a silly question now. I feel like we're really reeling it back to the beginning. I'm very curious about like who your sort of main screenwriting and directorial voices that you pull from a lot are.
I don't think that's polite. We're not going back. That's yeah. I feel like that's, I don't know, kind of feels like a natural progression. So, but I'll say, I don't know, I don't really know. I know Paul Thomas Anderson's my big influence in film, but I don't know that he's the big influence in like sort of the voice, but maybe like what I kind of want to do and how I want to proceed. I mean, Charlie Kaufman, screenwriting wise, is like, he does, he's interesting, and I feel like his earlier scripts are sort of like really in line with what I kind of, how I want to be presented. Patty Chayefsky, who wrote Network and Altered States, that's a screenwriter that I'm like, great. I'm 100% in line with this person. Screenwriting wise, and then directing and screenwriting and all that is like Safdie Brothers and Cronenberg and Joel Petroikis, and I don't know, goofy shit. Freaked is a huge movie influence for me, and I think Tom Stern and Alex Winters wrote that together, and that's like one of those movies that's like, if I could do anything that captures this vibe, I would. And you know, Werner Herzog is another huge influence for me. Harmony Korine. Those are influences, but like, you know, the screenplays I write, I feel like are really different than what I put out otherwise. You know, like the screenplay I think I have that's the strongest, that I feel like someone better take it now. Someone should take it now. It's like, it's Unforgiven. The Revenant and Unforgiven, and like, that's all it is. You know, it's like that kind of vibe. There's no, you know, there's sort of like my sort of take on it and the weirdness that I kind of like and gravitate towards. But, you know, it's a very, like, I don't want to say commercial, but it's not Harmony Korine. It's not Cronenberg. You know, the script that I won the Humanitas for, I think a lot of people, having read, you know, if they read my stuff, if they read this script, they would be really surprised that it was something I wrote, because it's like kind of a really like sweet and nice story, with no aggro. There's no aggro to it whatsoever. It's like no aggro whatsoever. It's the most positive story that I could ever do, but it's a weird concept. It's a 33-year-old dude whose dad is a TV VCR, and they go on a road trip together, and so it's like, I feel like my screenwriting things are way outside of what like my other things are, styles and influences and things like that.
Why do you think that is?
I have them as two different sort of modes in my mind, and I try and keep them as different. Screenwriting is more of like a logical thing to me, where I have to outline, and I can see the pieces, and I can put them together, and I can form it, and I can make it the way I want. I can do this. Whereas like, I kind of like have, I have what I find important in movies, which is like watchability, which is like logical progressions of things, you know, Aristotle's Poetics, the unity of time and space and all that stuff. It's like, those things are really important to me when I'm watching a movie. And you can like go outside and do weird stuff, but it's like, I gotta be able to follow what you're doing here. And if your script doesn't feel like something that was written with that following in mind, it just feels like it was something that was like kind of farted out, then I kind of like get uninvolved. But with stories and novels and things like that, like my writing process, but also the things I like to read is like, let's fart this out, let's go, you know. And I think it's easier for me to keep those separate, so that, you know, I don't go down the hole of expansion and sort of the things that don't work in screenwriting, but that work in novels. And I have to keep them separate. So I kind of have separate, you know, ideas and thoughts and influences.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's one of the things I guess that I kind of really appreciated about Mustard is that it starts out pretty, I don't know, I'll say disjointed, but I mean it non-derogatorily. There's a lot of ideas that are kind of put out in the first act-ish area that feel like a lot of different things. I think also, and I didn't know how many people would be interested in it, so I held myself off from talking about the color grading in the film. But anyway, a lot of different things are happening at the beginning. It feels sort of twee, it feels sort of drama, feels sort of horror. And then by the end of it, a lot of those things have come back and resolved in a way that feels like you're doing what you say you're doing with screenwriting. One of the things a fiction professor told me is that think about things as like opening and closing doors. And so at the beginning of Mustard, a whole bunch of doors are opened, but by the end, they are closed sufficiently that I don't say, but wait, what was that shot? It's a silly film and it's bewildering, but it's competent. Even if it doesn't necessarily want you to think it is, which is where I was coming from with the color grading. I didn't know if that was like a practical thing or if you were just sort of kind of adding that extra delirium to it.
No, that was definitely a like an awareness I had. I definitely had. I love good color grading. Love it. And so I kind of, tweaking things here and there. When things are unreal, they're a little unreal. When things are real, they're a little mundane. When things are boring, they're a little boring. When things are, and so there's definitely and the degrading of the film, the look of the degrading, especially at the end with the garage in the sort of hellscape zone, there's a degraded aspect to it that, it looks bad and stuff. And but yeah, I just, the whole movie, I wanted, it's a funnel, right? It's a funnel where, it all just comes down to this like singular sort of moment kind of thing. And then after that singular moment, it explodes a little bit, but it doesn't start at the funnel. It starts as like the trash being poured into the funnel. So you're starting like dropping with all this garbage, and then it goes in and comes down to a point and stuff like that. And, it's good to hear that it does come back, because like that was the intention, is that there's a lot of stuff that's set up that does have a payoff if you sit with it, that does have closure, that does have sort of, I don't want to say meaning, but like, it has a purpose of being in there. There's nothing really that isn't a joke that's paid off that I put in there. I tried to pay off every joke I set up, or every bit I set up has some kind of payoff, or it comes back in a way that changes it,
Mm-hmm.
If you see one thing, the next time you see it, it's something different, and yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more kind of excited I get about it. I like, there's a couple stories I've written where where during the writing I did not take myself nearly as seriously as I normally do. And like threw in a bunch of references and just did a whole bunch of different silly things. And there's something about those stories that does feel so good.
Mm-hmm.
And Mustard feels like that too, where it's like, it's saying so many different things about movies and people, and like it really did kind of feel like a movie that was a commentary on a bunch of different kinds of movies, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, it's always nice to see someone do something that's kind of like what you're doing or wondering about or thinking about, and see it turn out successfully, because then it gives you permission to kind of go deeper into that. That's one of the things I like about this show so much, is that like, oh, somebody really went for it in this direction.
Yeah.
And yeah,
that's what I wanted to do, is that it's just like, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't, I think anyone can make a movie if they want to make a movie. And like, I was kind of like, I always say that. And I was like, yeah, but you haven't. And so I was like, well, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try it. Right. And then it's like, this idea that you have to spend money on a movie or you have to do something. Right. And it's like, it's not a great movie, right? It's nothing that I would like go, I would go toe to toe with like, I don't know, anything with, I would not go toe to toe with anyone with mustard, right? And that's fine. But like, yeah, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, I think you can do a lot more with what you want to do and the stories you want to tell or the movie you want to make, and just do whatever you want. And like, if you do it in a way that's like partially entertaining, people will watch it. People will enjoy it. I think the big thing for me is that my sound was okay, because I think the thing that'll take me out of anything is bad sound. So I was like, does it sound okay? Okay, we're good, But yeah, I think that's, I don't know what I was getting at, but that's,
Yeah, the sound was good.
Freedom.
And freedom. There were moments there with sound where I was like, oh, he's just doing Man on the Street. He's out in public getting filmed doing things. And
that, I wanted to do so much more of that. And to the point where I'm trying to I'm trying to write something else that's a movie of nothing but that. A movie of nothing but man on the street stuff, and interacting with people. Because when I was out there looking for, doing on Hollywood, the guy I talked to, he was like laughing and stuff, but I made him very uncomfortable, and I was extremely uncomfortable, right? And there was a couple, you can see them looking at me. They could see what I was doing, and they were like, and there was one guy who was, he's trying to get bus tours, trying to get people to join bus tours. He was looking at me, and he knew what I was doing, trying to do, and he was like, yeah. So it was like, you get a whole different vibe out there with that kind of stuff. Even that little bit in 7-Eleven where I asked the guy what time it is, to me, that was really funny, because like, he was like, it felt like a bit. It felt like a bit that we had rehearsed for a minute, but it was just spontaneous, and then I ran off out of the store, saying like, oh shit, I'm late. And I run off, and that guy was, he was thoroughly confused, and the relationship that I had with that man every time I went back into that 7-Eleven was never the same after that. And it was very funny. It was very funny to me.
Yeah. That gives me just as much anxiety as the thought of people who are just living out in LA saying they're screenwriters who don't have a feature in their desk somewhere. Just,
yeah.
God, I can't imagine, which I would rather do less. So I respect you for it, because oh boy, that's something I would have, been like super into when I was like 16. But now that I have to like understand that I'm part of a society, I feel like I'd have a hard time with that. So we're
it was extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad it was, because it felt uncomfortable. And was the road rage bit, did you put
real 100% actual situation? Some guy, the situation that I filmed that guy screaming at me was not, the beginning bit, right? The beginning, the what, me going pull over and all that stuff. That was something I added after this incident happened. But the filming, the road rage, yeah, that's 100% real. This dude, this guy, was trying to pass me while going through, one of the canyons over here. I want to say it was Laurel Canyon, maybe. I don't know. He was trying to pass me, but it's a one lane and there's cars in front of me. And he was getting so mad. And when he finally passed me, he had pulled on a balaclava or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Balaclava? Yeah. And pointed something at me. And it looked like a gun, right? I'm pretty sure it was a handgun of some kind. And it made me very mad. And so he pulled into a tanning salon and I followed him. And he got out and I got out and I just started calling him a dumbass and a bitch. And he started calling me a dumbass and a bitch. And we yelled at each other for about 15 minutes in front of these like Middle Eastern dudes on their lunch break having a cigarette. And they were just watching us laughing. And me and this guy were screaming at each other. And I filmed it. And I filmed the whole thing. So there's actually a 7-minute edit of that argument. And then the guy goes into the tanning salon and I just leave. And that was, it was real. Very awkward, but I knew I was going to do something with that. I knew I was going to keep that footage and use it for some reason. So.
Perfect. And that's the end. Oh man. Well, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad he didn't murder you.
Yeah, it was just a young guy, and now thinking back on it, it probably was just his wallet. That he has perfected the art of holding a wallet to look like a gun to intimidate people who aren't from Texas and have had guns pointed at them multiple times, you know? And he was a young guy and he was goofy and he was shaking the whole time. He was getting mad at me and stuff like that. It was it was just a stupid event. And, I don't know. I was having, at that time I was having sort of a little bit of a nervous breakdown. So I was pretty angry. So the road rage incident, I don't look at that with pride. I don't look at that with happiness or joy or anything like that. But I look at it as material that I got, and I'm glad I got it.
Yeah.
Would I do that today? No. All right. So this is a story from Bielecki. It's called Hurt People, Hurt People. And it goes like this. You've got a thing inside you. It grows like a weed but screams, hate things you shouldn't. You have a partner, a kid, a place to live, a good job, even time for you to pursue hobbies. Things are good, except you're miserable. You find ways to make others miserable, locking yourself in a room during the day, spending nights driving around the city alone. Being with your family feels like a chore you never want to do. Your dad used to do things like this. One day you find herbicide in your garage and take a drink. It's a small sip, but you get big sick. Vomit, dehydration. Out for days. Your partner takes care of you and you recover. But something about the pressure, the pain, and the otherness of being sick mutes the weed, stops it from growing. You think you've killed it. Things start to feel good, balanced. Days aren't always all bad. You want to stay. You play house very well. Take your partner on dates, go down on them most nights. You cook lunch and dinner peacefully instead of slamming things like usual. You take your kid to one of those on-ice shows and you'll have fun. But it doesn't last. The weed grows back. You feel its roots crawling around, spiky fibers dragging against your cortex. You wait for your partner to take your kid to dance practice. You go to the garage and take another sip of herbicide, this one bigger. The sickness strikes you down like a biblical plague. You sweat, convulse, everything goes black. You wake up days later in bed. Your partner tells you they almost took you to the hospital, that you had a seizure in the night. You say, it's nothing, it's just a thing. You finally tell your partner about your dad, how you're acting more like him now than you ever have. You also tell her about how he killed himself, car in the garage, how he blamed it on you and your mom. Through tears, you tell her you don't want to be like him. She says you won't, you aren't, you never will be. The goodness returns. It doesn't come easy, but you let it flow. At times you forget to cherish it, but you always find a way to remind yourself it's there, and everyone lives happily ever after. until the ever after ends and the weed reinvents itself. Roots that dig deep, stalks coated in thorny anchors, flowers spreading toxic pollen. This time you don't wait. You go to the garage, take a big swig of herbicide. You get sick, end up in the hospital, a coma you wake up from a month later. Some organs fail while you're asleep. Only this time when you wake, the warmth isn't there. The weed has spread into your eyes and throat, on its way to your heart. Makes noise you've never heard before. Screeching laughter that only registers in the frequencies weeds can hear. The laugh brings the misery back, worse. Within a month, your partner threatens to leave. Your kids hate you more than a kid's allowed to. And the part of you that cares is starting to lose the battle against the part of you that doesn't. You know another sip won't be enough. You need more. You must stop the weed from spreading. Your partner walks in as you've got the bottle tilted back, chemicals guzzling down your throat. You swallow. Try letting them know what you're doing. You only want what comes after the sick. But they already know. Their eyes say this. They don't stop you. They wait for you to drink the herbicide, put it into that thing inside you, because it's for the best.